My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Amanda Jordan, Director of Digital Strategy at RicketyRoo. Amanda is one of the most popular and sought-after personalities in local SEO. She is an in-demand conference presenter who you might have heard at MozCon, Local U, White Spark Local Search Summit, the Women in Tech SEO Festival, and many other places. I caught up with Amanda shortly after her presentation at MozCon, which was about the future of local landing pages. I'm going to start our conversation asking her why many small businesses struggle with local landing pages and what savvy small businesses are doing differently. After this episode, make sure to check out her local landing page checklist, which is linked to in the show notes. We'll also talk about a recent local SEO case study she did on the Moz blog titled How We Increase Revenue with Speed Optimization. The methodology for a local SEO case study was very interesting to me. What would happen if you improved page speed but literally did nothing else on the site? The results were stunning. Hear all about it on this episode. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with the extremely impressive Amanda Jordan. We'll chat about why local SEO should lean into technical SEO. We'll talk about her course over at Bright Local Academy. And we'll spend a little time talking about why small businesses need to diversify their content sources. All right, Amanda Jordan, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you on. One of the things I am excited about is the timing. You were back from MozCon. You were speaking there earlier this month. Congratulations. Your speech was celebrated all over SEO Twitter. And I wanted to ask you about some topics from that speech. So you talked about local landing pages, and that's where I'd like to start the conversation, because in local SEO, the common speaking topics are like GMB, GBP optimization, best practices for post Q&A, those kinds of things. Local spam is always a hot topic. Local link building gets a lot of attention. But the first thing I thought of when I heard your topic was, wow, that's an important thing that not that many people are talking about. So, taking me back to when you were in the brainstorming, why did you choose to speak about local landing pages? And why do you think this doesn't get more attention?
So why I chose to speak about it was because I've been in local SEO for a decent amount of time, and I've worked with small businesses, 1 to 2 locations, 3 locations, 4, and businesses that have 200 plus locations, and all of them had terrible location landing pages. No one was actually doing a good job, and this includes everyone from credit unions, energy companies, Walmart, huge retailers, and just a plumber who has 3 locations. They all struggle with this one element of local SEO that's incredibly important. I think local SEO gets pigeonholed a lot into being what is impacted by Google Maps or the Google Maps aspect of it. But really, local SEO to me is any SEO where there is a geographical element as to where you want to rank. So that includes technical SEO. To me is local SEO if my client is slower than all their competitors. I also did a case study for Moz about that as well, is that we had a client where their focus is I think it was home senior care, or no, it was house cleaning services nationwide. And all we did was improve their core web vital scores, and they had a 55% increase in revenue. That was the only changes made to their website in a year, right? Because that's the only thing we did. I can look back in our project management system. I can tell you for a fact that is the only thing we were paid to do during that time. And they had a 55% increase in revenue just from having a better user experience. And to me, that is local SEO, because that local client still expected to see an increase in revenue no matter what SEO tactics we use to get it. So it's kind of just based on where you want to rank, not necessarily what needs to be done to get you ranked. It's just that there's an added complexity because you do have Google business profiles as a factor. You have proximity as a factor, and then you have Yelp and TripAdvisor and all of those sites as a factor that come into play for local SEO that typically don't come into play for other types of businesses.
Well, awesome. And I plan to ask you questions. Let's put a pin in the Moz blog that you wrote, because I thought it was really good, and I'm gonna talk about it later. But you're the kind of person that makes me feel lazy, because you write blogs at Moz, you speak all over the place, you've got a really growing agency that you're working on with Blake and the team there at RicketyRoo. So
Hmm.
I, I have a hard time keeping up with all the stuff you're doing. I don't know if you ever sleep. But first, I want to get back to the MozCon presentation. So you mentioned that everywhere you've gone, these local landing pages are terrible. It doesn't matter if it's
Hmm.
Walmart. It doesn't matter if it's just a plumber down the street. Can we get into that? Like, what are some of the common landing page fails? When you're
Yeah.
analyzing these, what are you seeing over and over again?
One is a page that does not inspire any interaction by the user. So, uh, yeah, there's not a lot of ways you can talk about being a plumber or a junk removal company that's interesting. But that's essentially your job of the location landing page is to what attract and convert. It's not a one page deal. It's not a blog post, right? So it's not just about getting traffic to the website. It's also about converting that traffic. And what I see is that there's a lack of focus on both of those things. And I think that can be hard to do because most pages from an SEO perspective, like they're either kind of one or the other, right? With as SEOs, we do focus more on the content side of what we're building. And that means that performance, conversion rate optimization for location landing pages often fall to the wayside and aren't considered as important. And that's something that we just kind of have to fix because unfortunately, like, well, it is what it is. Like I worked with a lot of law firms and things like that and lawyers and a lot of these different types of clients. They don't care how much traffic you bring. If their phone isn't ringing, if they're not getting new cases, it doesn't matter. And so my goal is like, what can I do from within SEO, within my what I do, to get more leads? And I see a lot of pages are falling short of doing what they can do to get that traffic and get that to turn into leads. And it's often duplicate content. It's often uninteresting content that doesn't inspire action. Um, it's often not building trust on their location landing pages, so not including anything, not giving people a reason why to choose you over your competitors. That's one of the roles of those pages. I see it as like to me it truly is like a landing page first. Like it's essentially the job of that page is to get people there and then get them to call. If I can do that on that one page without them having to go anywhere else, that's ideal to me. That is the ideal situation that I can rank for plumber near me. Someone clicks on that location landing page and then they call because they see that you provide the services and you have a good reputation. That's all they need to know. Everything else is kind of fluff, right? At that point, because that client knows that the intent of that keyword for location landing pages is always very strong, very transactional, very commercial. So if we can't convert on our pages that rank for those keywords with that very strong intent for being a good lead, then essentially it's just for the traffic. So yeah, so like it's the issues I always see are usually related to duplicate content and uninteresting content, and I don't fault copywriters for that because there's only so many ways, like I said during the presentation, you can talk about unclogging a toilet, right? Like if you have 50 plumbing clients, they all need to have a page about drain cleaning or unclogging drains and things like that. But there's only so many ways you can talk about it. It's up to us as strategists to come up with new ways to get these location landing pages to rank for the keywords and as well as be interesting and being something that people want to interact with. And even better, if we can make it a page that people want to link to, that's even better, right? Like if people want to interact with this page, people want to share this page because it has interesting information on it. Even better. That's the best a location landing page can do is attract, convert, and get links. That's the goal for essentially the majority of transaction pages that rank for transaction intent keywords.
Yeah, and I love it. And I also noticed the presentation is based on research that you guys did. So
Mm-hmm.
particularly in the home services vertical. So the methodology is described in the MozCon presentation. If people are interested, you can download those slides. But you found that some companies are excelling. So for instance, there's
Yeah.
like a heating and air company that's ranking well in doing well. But you compiled all of this research into a landing page checklist that was announced at
Mm-hmm.
MozCon. And I want to point our users or our listeners to that. There are about 30 items to check off. There are notes, descriptions, all that stuff. But how how do you recommend the people who are listening to this use that checklist that you created? What's an appropriate way to use it going forward?
Yeah. So I consider that pretty much a checklist for how you template your location landing pages. It's not that every page needs to be 100% unique through and through. It's just that these are the elements that you need to be successful. And if you have a templated approach and you can get that unique content on those pages, then you're going to be golden. Like you're gonna be able to convert people that go to that page. You're going to be able to get that traffic. So it includes those trust signals. It includes those conversion things that impact conversions, but it also includes what you need to rank from, just rank the page in general. So I tried to make it inclusive, but the goal is to take that and then make sure that your templates for your location landing pages has all those features. And if it doesn't, you need to update to include some of these features that you're missing so that you get more out of your location landing page, whether it be improving your rankings, if you're seeing that you're short there, or improving your conversions once people get to those pages, if you're seeing that you're not getting the leads that you should be getting from those types of pages.
Awesome. And let me tell you what I like most about this checklist. So there are some things that every SEO would expect to be on a checklist, like write title tags, write meta description, yada, yada. But in this speech, you recommend that businesses and SEOs diversify their content sources. So if I look at the landing page checklist, there's local content and city content. There's user-generated content, first-person content, third-party content. What's the psychology there? Is Google rewarding landing pages that have a variety of content types? Is that the idea?
The idea there is, one, get rid of the duplicate content issue. Like, I've had clients, it's not always an issue, but I've seen several times. I've worked with a home senior care company where they had locations all over the country. I'm trying to think of how many. I think they had about 100 locations, and they had a microsite for every location. Each location was a franchise, so they were owned by a different person, and then they had service area pages, landing pages for each, and they were all duplicative. Right. And some of them performed well, and some of them didn't. And I could not tell you why. Some of those locations performed well with the duplicate content and others didn't. But we found that when we can, like with the ones that weren't performing well, when we updated their content to be more unique and diversified, they saw an improvement in their leads, to the point that individual franchise owners were coming to us and asking if they can pay us separately from what was being done with the corporate office to get their website, to get those rankings and improvements. And they were referring each other to us. So in addition to having like the corporate office as a client, we had individual franchise owners coming to us and asking for our helps individually. Some of them even started making enough money that they just sold their franchise. Like, they went from not being able to get enough leads to being so successful. They're like, I don't even need to do this anymore. I'm just going to sell it and spend time growing another business. So we just found that having a variety of content sources helps your content be unique, helps it be interesting to visitors as well. And then you're ahead of your competition because your competitors aren't doing all of that. So if you're the only one doing that, it's going to take a while for them to catch up, especially if you've put into processes in place so that when you open a new location, right? Scalability is always something that I think about, especially for large multi-location and enterprise level clients, is that if we open a new location, can we repeat this process and get the same results? Or are we starting from scratch every single time? Right. So just making sure that everything is repeatable and we can get the same results again and again and again. And that's kind of that's my kind of like philosophy around that.
Well, I love it. And a couple of times here you've mentioned it. It's like there are metrics that are vanity metrics, and then there are metrics that actually matter. Like they're like the idea here is to make our clients money. Some of the challenge, as I could see it, is we don't always have insight into that. We have, how many forms did you get? How many phone calls did you get? But we don't see that end result. I think we could have more meaningful conversations with our clients and be better strategists if we got there. What tips do you have about getting further down into the customer journey, where we can actually see not just like conversions, but also revenue, which is really at the end of the day what matters?
Yeah. So part of that is working with clients so that they understand how much a lead is worth to them. And a lot of clients don't know that off the bat. And different types of leads are worth different types of money. Like someone calling you because they had a pipe burst in their and it's an emergency repair in the middle of the night. That's probably going to be worth more than someone's like, my sink is backed up a little bit. Can you come look at it? Right? Like those things are going to have a different value assigned to them. But what we try to go after is understanding, like, one, what is the lifetime value of your client? That is what we ask in our onboarding process. So even if, like, sometimes they don't know, right? They have no, they're like, I don't know what a lifetime value is. But can you, like, trying to assign a value to those leads? And then when you work with professional services and home services companies, they often have tools and software that they use. One of the popular ones for home services is Service Titan, and it helps them to track essentially everything that's going on with their business in one hub. And they can see how many, like, the dollars, like, related to what we're doing. Like, okay, we had this many calls come in. This is how much revenue we got from Google My Business calls specifically. And that makes it a lot easier for us with those types of clients. But with, like, attorneys and things like that, I've gone as far as to listening to their phone calls. Like, oh, you have call recording? I will listen to your phone call, and I'll tell you when you're, like, your team isn't picking up the phone, and or they're letting it ring too long, or they haven't gotten back to someone that they said they would call back. Sometimes it does, when there's an issue, it does take some digging on our part to to show the value of what we're doing, and when there's a gap in what we're providing and the number of leads we're providing, and actually them turning them into customers. But the only part I can control is the SEO, right? So, like, after we get to, like, if we make sure tracking is set up, if we talk to them and try to get LTV or a lifetime value of their each customer, or different types of customers from them. We have an idea of how much they make for specific types of services. We can kind of guesstimate what's going on as far as this is how much money or value you're getting out of your SEO, based on what we're seeing. But yeah, I've gone through clients' form submissions before. I've gone through their calls and said, oh, this is how many actual leads you got this month versus how many form submissions. This is how many actual leads you got from calls versus just calls coming in. Another way to do that too is calls over a minute or calls over 3 minutes. So if a call is over a certain amount of time, there's a better chance that it's a lead, because if it's a spam or robocall, you're not going to stay on the phone with them for 3 minutes. So that's another way that we qualify, is like, well, you're seeing an increase of calls over 3 minutes. That means that there's a high likelihood that that's increase in actual leads for your business, because why else would you spend that much time on a phone call with someone and when you're at work? And CallRail is a good tracking solution for that. If someone's looking to figure out how do they track those calls, it'll also track keywords that people searched to before they called. It will also let you track the sources, so you can tell if it's direct, PPC, or organic. And you can even use it for your traditional marketing too. So if you're doing print, if you do billboards, you can have a tracking number on that billboard, and they call it, then you know that came from that tracking number, and you can trace it back to that specific type of marketing that you're doing. But we try to, like, tie what we're doing to revenue as often as we can, because that's essentially what our clients care most about. And working with a lot of small businesses like RicketyRoo does, it's really important for them to see the impact on their bottom line, because they don't have a huge budget to spend on marketing. So they need to see that they're getting the benefit out of it to consider it worth continuing that relationship and continuing the work.
All right. Well, I love this. I wonder if we've worked with some of the same clients. I can't believe how many people just, like, don't answer their phone. And it's weird. We spend all this time talking about, like, complex SEO topics and, you know, back end of a website and stuff like that. Some of the biggest breakthroughs I've had with clients are, like, just going, no one's answering your phone. You get so much more money just by picking up the phone. So it's an interesting world we're in. Anyway, I want to abruptly shift gears to the blog on Moz, as I mentioned. Really impressive. Again, this is more research from you and your team. And I love the start of it. The premise is that local SEOs kind of stay out of technical SEO topics, like you said at the beginning. That's just not our thing. But in reality,
Yeah.
technical SEO isn't a non-factor in the local algorithm. Far from
Mm-hmm.
it. Even if it was, like, and it isn't. Even if it was, page speed impacts user experience, which impacts conversions and the bottom line. So ultimately, you compiled research. We should discuss the findings, but why did you decide to do this research in the first place? Why did you decide that page speed was going to be something you wanted to study?
Yeah. So before I worked at RicketyRoo, I worked at a great technical SEO agency called Locomotive, that's based in Raleigh. And working at a technical SEO agency and being the only local SEO there, I learned a lot because it was not what I was used to and what I was comfortable with. And I really appreciate the experience I had there because it pushed me out of my comfort zone of what I thought SEO was. Because I had been a content writer before, so I knew, like, I was comfortable with content. I was comfortable with on-page SEO. I was comfortable with Google business profiles and understanding that. But when I would start working with enterprise clients, and where, like, these little issues with technical things can, like, yeah, if you have a website where, like, you have 100 people visiting a day and it's enough to annoy one person, that's not a big deal. But when you're talking about millions of people over months, because it's a huge website, then those things become a bigger issue. And I've been focusing on, like, what can I do to help local SEOs feel more comfortable with more technical or more data-driven aspects of SEO that aren't necessarily about Google Maps, aren't necessarily about content, but, like, this is still a part of SEO. Like, I see the pillars of SEO being, like, technical, for local SEOs anyway, being technical on-page content and Google My Business, Google Maps, proximity, and all of those things. And where, like, a lot of local SEOs are missing that technical pillar because it's unfamiliar. Like, they don't come from a background where they're a developer, so they don't have that experience. And they're afraid of breaking something on the website, which, like, is a valid thing to be concerned about, right? It's not like it doesn't happen. So that's why I decided to go on that topic. And originally I was looking into, I worked with J.R. Oaks, who's very into automation and programming and Python. And he encouraged me to learn more about Python and understand it and get better at data storytelling, because that was something that when you're talking to these, like, really big companies that are franchises, that are energy companies that serve, like, essentially the entire state of Texas, things like that, is like, you kind of have to know more than, like, oh, this is the best thing that everyone recommends, so we should do it. You need to be able to tie it back to what's happening on their website and their actual data and what's going on. And learning Python and having those other skills helped me to get to that point quicker. Like, it's less time parsing through information and more time being able to actually analyze it. And that's so, like, learning those skills, it helped me tremendously. And so I was like, I bet other local SEOs could benefit from having those skills too, or learning more about these things too. And I bet it doesn't have to seem as scary as it does right now and as foreign, because if I can do it, there's nothing incredibly special about my SEO abilities that makes me able to understand this, that other local SEOs can't understand it. So I wanted to kind of help bridge that gap so that that's technical SEO and local SEO aren't necessarily completely different things. Like, technical SEO can be a part of your local SEO strategy, especially if you make backups, right? And you test things and you don't push things to the published live site without making sure you're not breaking anything first. So, like, WordPress sites, it's like a very easy place to start. Understanding, especially if they're in WP Engine or a similar platform, understanding, like, what's going on, because you can set up those backups. You can have a staging site. You can have those sites where you can just test things and play around and figure it out. And that's something that Blake does a lot of. And, like, when I got on board at RicketyRoo, and I watched what they were doing with speed, and it was broken down in such a way that I'd never seen before, where it was so easy to understand what you need to do for Core Web Vitals. It wasn't like, and and that's one of the things that I love about working with other SEOs that see it this way. Is like, it's not my job to make things more complicated or seem complicated or come up for new definitions for terms or things that everyone is already doing. It's my job to simplify it. So like when it was simplified, I was like, I get it now. I bet I can explain this in a way maybe that other people will get too. And that's essentially my goal. I don't want other elements of SEO to be mystified for other people who focus on other things like local or content. I want to demystify as many elements of SEO as possible so that we can just help all of our clients. I'm not afraid of my competition. So like, if I have a competitor who reads something I wrote and it's like, oh, time for us to update our core web vitals, I think that's great. I want it to be competitive because then the user wins in the end.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. Yeah, so it's worth kind of re-saying, or like at the risk of repeating ourselves, like what you did with this experiment, because it was really interesting. I like the methodology. So you wanted to improve page speed, literally nothing else. Like don't even no contamination in terms of like another helpful tactic possibly. So you ran the test, you improved page speed considerably, and there was a meaningful increase in new users, but the conversion wins were even bigger. So like the conversion wins way out, like in terms of in percentage terms, were way bigger than the new user lift. I think you said earlier it was like 55% increase in revenue.
Yeah.
From simply improving page speed. Explain how that could be.
Yeah.
That seems like such a convincing study. How could that be?
Yeah, it's because people don't want to stay on websites that suck. Like I've been thinking about this, like for myself, because I've been. I shared this at MozCon when I was on the stage. I was looking for a new eye doctor, and if I didn't like the experience I had on their website, I left, and I just went to another one. Like there's like within driving distance of me, there's plenty of eye doctors. Why would I go to one where I have to call just to book an appointment and won't let me book an appointment online? Like the experience itself, I think matters a lot for local, and that's not necessarily happening as much as it should be in improving that experience. So like if you provide a better experience, if people can get to booking an appointment faster, if they don't have to wait forever for the page to load and just see the elements of the page and read about what you offer, or even just be able to see the phone number and click on it from their phone, like they're more likely to convert. That's essentially, that's all it was. It's just like better user experience, then users want to interact with you and they want to keep going to you because they know they're going to have a good experience. Something you said earlier reminded me when you were talking about like kind of like things that are out of our control. One of the things that I think about often is when clients are like, I need to improve my local SEO. I need to be in the local pack, but they have a terrible average rating. It's like this. It's, to me, that's the same thing. Like that's still another like user experience and relationship type thing. And when clients don't focus on those things, all the SEO in the world is not going to get them where they need to be, because the phone is not going to ring if you have a 2.5 rating but you're ranked number one, and your competitors have a 4.5. Like it's not going to change anything really. And I think there's a lot of kind of like some strategies need some refocusing so that you're focusing on what's going to make the most impact for that client. And what's going to help them grow the best, not necessarily what are the SEO tactics that everyone is saying that I should be doing.
Awesome. Well, listen, I have one last thing to promote of yours, and it's that Bright Local has this academy with training courses. I always want to point people to this. It's got training courses from some of the top local SEOs in the world. You can find stuff from Claire Carlisle, Nikki Mosier's on there. SearchLab's own Greg Gifford is on there. Amelia, you have a course there about how to perform local SEO audits for multi-location businesses. These courses are totally free, so anybody can go on there. They don't charge you any money for them. Tell our audience about that collaboration with Bright Local and what they're liable to find in your course.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. This is like really my process. This is like actually what I did to win over enterprise clients. So like I'm not like holding anything back in it. So essentially what you're going to find is what you need to do audits and figure out why your client is behind, or why a location specifically is behind, and what factors are causing that. and it goes through content reasons, it goes through local specific reasons. So it allows you to kind of see what's going on individually with locations, because it's very easy to come up with something like a blanket strategy that's like, we're going to apply this to every location. But sometimes based on the market and the industry, some areas need more attention or a different strategy than others. For example, like a personal injury lawyer in Atlanta is going to need a much more robust and aggressive strategy than someone who like lives like a personal injury lawyer down the street from me, where we have like a population of maybe 2,000 people and 2 traffic lights, right? So like it's going to really depend on like on where you are and who you're trying to service and how much competition you have. And this multi-location audit is about breaking that down so that you understand the competition level based on your locations and what you need to do to catch up with those competitors.
Well, awesome. Well, we'll link to it in the show notes. It's really good stuff. I love this thing from Bright Local that they're doing, and I'd love that they give it away for free. So that's, Amanda, that's all the time I've got for today. I want to give you a virtual cheers and thank you for coming on. For our audience, we'll be back next week with another episode of Suds Search. Thanks so much, Amanda. I'll see you around.
Thank you.